and welcome back to Small Caps. My name is Jess Fertig, and today we are chatting with ASX-listed International Graphite. The ASX ticker code is IG6. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome Managing Director and CEO Andrew Worland back to the show. So hi, Andrew. It's been a while. Welcome back.
Hey, Jess. How are you? Good to see you.
Yeah, great. So Andrew, let's just delve straight in. Since it's been a while, I was hoping you might be able to give us a bit of a recap on the company, what you've been up to, a brief overview on your projects, just to get us started.
Sure. So International Graphite, as you mentioned, is listed on the ASX under the ticker IG6. We're coming up to our 2-year anniversary in early April of our listing. We're essentially looking to develop a number of graphite assets here in Western Australia. So we're very, very focused on our Western Australian footprint. The first part of our business has been developing a graphite downstream processing R&D capability in Collie, in about 200 kilometres south of Perth, where we've been looking to demonstrate our capability of undertaking the first 2 steps in the downstream processing of graphite concentrates at a pilot and R&D scale. That is micronizing and spheronising. We've recently expanded that footprint. We're in the light industrial area in Collie, and we have added what we call a qualification-scale micronizing plant. And micronizing is an important step what's the first critical step in the downstream processing of graphite concentrates for battery anode material. It also has its own industrial applications. And what we're looking to achieve there is initiate our own micronizing business at a small scale, as part of developing a market for our battery anode materials. Micronized byproducts are a result of the spheronising process of downstream processing, which is the second stage of the processing of concentrates. And so developing that byproduct market ahead of getting the balance of our project, which I'll explain in a moment, up and running, we see as particularly beneficial for shareholders and generates cash flow for us. And we've been ably assisted by government, both state and federal, with respect to those ambitions. So we'll be looking to expand that qualification plant to a commercial scale plant in the second half of this calendar year. The big graphite asset that we have on our books is the Springdale Graphite project on the south coast of Western Australia. It's where Musk Chairman and I are here today, looking over the deposit with some of the landowners. The deposit's a significant graphite deposit by both Australian and global standards. We've did a huge drilling campaign in 2022 and 2023, and we significantly increased the size, some 3.5 times, increased the size of the existing resource. So we have a graphite resource here, which we think is ideally suited for battery anode materials. And the idea would be to build a mine and concentrator down here at Springdale and truck our concentrates up to Collie for downstream processing. And that leads to the final stage of our business, if you like, strategy and model, is to build those battery anode facilities in Collie. And that would start with micronizing, spheronising and purification, and ultimately getting into a coated battery anode product or a precursor product, which is often how they're referred to. So that's the suite of assets that we have on our books, and we're vigorously trying to develop those as quickly as we possibly can.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. So now, just focusing on your Springdale project, you mentioned concentrates and purification. The company just announced yesterday, reports on strong purification and electrochemical results at your Springdale project. Can you elaborate on the significance of those results, in the broader context of the Springdale project?
Sure. So what we've done is, as we've drilled out the resource, both ourselves and the former owners, Comet, of the project, we have taken that drill core and prepared concentrates. So we would basically, if you like, mock up at a pilot scale at ALS here up in Perth, and we would essentially produce a concentrate from that drill core. That concentrate is then has been taken to experts in Germany to do test work on it to determine its characteristics for battery anode material. So the first part of the process is to do those steps that we just mentioned that we're looking to do in Collie, which is micronizing, spheronising, and purification of the concentrates. The first 2 steps are primarily milling processes. The purification step is the step that lifts the grade of a concentrate from, in the case of Springdale, it'll be a 95% graphite concentrate, and lifts that up to what's known as battery anode specification, which is 99.95% and above. And there are a number of ways in the industry which that can be done. We know the industry, the standard industry manner is using hydrofluoric acid, which we know will work across almost all graphite deposits. We're looking at a caustic acid treatment, which is non-HF, and that's what has demonstrated that we've been able to purify the concentrate to above that battery grade material. So that's the first great step, and that's what those results essentially said, that particular chemistry will work, or has worked at pilot scale to show that the concentrate can make its way through the specification process of a battery anode material. The second part of it was to determine the suitability of that concentrate from electricity and conductivity perspective. And again, we were able to achieve the sort of minimum thresholds that one needs to see in a lithium-ion battery to make sure that the anode performs its particular function relative to the rest of the chemistry of the battery. So we're really pleased with how those tests have come out. We've still got more work to do on that, and we'll have quite an extensive plan for the balance of this calendar year to expand on those results and to refine the operating conditions, but all moving in the right direction for us.
Yeah, fantastic, Andrew. Yeah, it sounds like some very positive initial results with further work to do, as you mentioned. Now, just pivoting slightly, the company just announced a recent agreement with Comet Resources. Would you mind just giving us an overview of that agreement and what it means for the company? How is this potentially beneficial for IG6?
Sure. So this is a really important transaction for us. As I mentioned before, Comet were the former owner of the Springdale Graphite project. They were looking to go in a different direction to graphite 2 years ago when they saw the capabilities that we have within our group to take that project through to into the battery anode world and expand the project. And we've done that over the past 2 years. In return for vending the project into IG6, they received 40 million shares in the company, and they look to recapitalise themselves and develop a sort of a base metals business, if you like. And unfortunately for Comet, they were unable to successfully do that and recapitalise their company over the last 2 years. And as a result of that, ASX delisted them from the exchange in late January of this year. So but they had a conundrum, and so did we, in so much as that we had a major shareholder that the whole marketplace was aware had some financial challenges as a result of that 2 to 3 year hiatus from the capital markets as they looked to recapitalise the business, and therefore had debts and so forth that needed to be managed. And the fear amongst investors was that they would be, the board of Comet would have no other alternative but to liquidate some of the investment they had in IG6. And that was an open secret, if you like, in the marketplace. And that was doing nothing for our shares, for IG6 share price. So we had this perception of a significant overhang. You know, what investor in their right mind would want to invest into a company where there was a sort of a perception of a big sell order with respect to a significant amount of stocks that would have just seen the share price tumble. And so Comet and ourselves got together to look to see how we could address this because their position in IG6 is a significant investment for their company. And so every cent that our price was falling, it was a direct hit to their shareholders, just as it was to us. So we were perfectly aligned with in terms of the terror that we were both facing, if you like, from a shareholder perspective. So we got together and decided we would step in as a company, IG6. We would help them satisfy their sort of debt obligations that they had accrued over the past 18 months to 2 years. And in return for that, we were given the opportunity to appoint a majority of the directors. And what that essentially does is allows us to control how that shareholding of Comet in IG6 is dealt with, or not dealt with, perhaps even. And so that's actually cleared that overhang up. So from an investor's perspective, there's no more concern from investors that there's a sort of unaccounted for stock that might hit the market and be an overhang on potential any investment. So you've seen the market react almost instantly to that in terms of our share price. It's gone from 11 cents, hit 17 yesterday, and that growth and appreciation is 100% due to that transaction and the removal of that overhang in the stock. So it's a peculiar one. It's not one that many probably have seen in the past, but it's an important one, and it's a good one for International Graphite shareholders, and it'll see us clear the decks to be able to hopefully get some benefits from the great news results we've got coming up over the next 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, fantastic, Andrew. And talking about reinvigorated shareholder confidence, the company also received, which you mentioned before, an R&D tax incentive. How were these funds received? Why were they received, and what are you going to use them for?
Well, the Australian government runs a research and development rebate scheme, which is there to encourage investment in new technologies and new processes across all industries, not just mining and minerals processing. Our work that we're doing down in Collie to develop new graphite processing technologies for Australia qualifies for that innovation under the R&D scheme. Generally speaking, I think you get 43.5 cents in the dollar back from the government for all of the eligible expenditure that you incur. And so that rebate of just under $1.3 million that we received at the end of the week before last was in respect of expenditure we'd incurred in the 2023 financial year. And so it was essentially a rebate on that expenditure. So that comes into our working capital, and it's available for us to spend on our projects as we need to over the coming months.
Yeah, fantastic, Andrew. So now looking at the macro side of things for graphite, China's graphite export restrictions have obviously created quite an opportunity for graphite companies. How is IG6 sort of positioned to capitalize on this upward trend for graphite, in your opinion? Yeah,
so I can't emphasise how important having assets in Australia are, and in West Australia in particular. We have received a lot of inbound interest from Asian, North American and European strategic partners, if you like. And some of those partners are across each of the particular markets. We were in Korea 3 weeks ago, talking with a number of interested parties up in Korea. We have a number of the Japanese groups, trading houses, and those involved in the purification and coating processes that are interested in what we're doing. So we've been very I think we've been very active on that front. Releasing the scoping study that we did for the integrated scoping study back in January of this year has kind of it's really put some attributes around the project that allows investors to sort of start to determine production cases and operating cost structures and capital cost structures and investment quantities and so forth. And that's been a really important milestone for us to allow us to have more advanced conversations with these groups. We could sign MOUs tomorrow with all sorts of with a number of different parties. We just don't think that's necessarily the appropriate way of engaging with that particular market at this point, because we don't see any need to select a particular horse right at this instant. We're looking to try and obtain the best opportunity we can, and we'll get that as we develop the projects and they become more advanced and de-risked. So the thirst overseas for a non-China specific critical mineral is real, and we're seeing that through a lot of inbound calls. And I think our projects and the stage of the development is in the perfect sweet spot for that investment over the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, fantastic, Andrew. And talking about de-risking your projects, shifting gears a little bit to your new graphite micronizing plant in Collie, WA. What are the sort of key milestones for that?
Yeah, at the moment we are going through, I guess, a full set of processing conditions we've got quite a significant amount of concentrate that we've imported that's sitting in our shed in Collie. Our project manager in Collie is essentially using that concentrate to test how the micronizing plant works under different conditions and what different product sizes we can obtain from that particular those concentrates, and what the impact of that is on the the operating performance of the unit. And all of that data will then be used to upgrade that facility to a commercial scale. So if you like it, the equipment itself is much bigger than pilot, it's much bigger than demonstration. There are commercial applications for that scale of equipment in different industries, but in terms of the graphite industry, it's sort of it's the step prior to a commercial scale facility. So so the work we're doing there at the moment is really test work. It's setting up the facilities for making that next investment decision. So as I said, we'd hope to make that by mid-year, perhaps Q3, and give investors some clarity as to when that will start generating cash flow for us, that particular decision. And we've been well supported in those endeavours by government, in state and federal governments in terms of grants. And there are some really interesting initiatives that we're involved with that may be announced over the next few months with respect to that as well. So some really exciting times down at Collie for us with that qualification and micronizing plant.
Yeah, great. So now, Andrew, beyond battery applications, what other industrial uses, are there for micronized graphite? Just as a
polymers, plastic. It's really diverse. It's really diverse. It's used in all sorts of weird and wonderful ways that we would never necessarily imagine into high specialty applications in surgeries, for example, in hospitals. Polymers, plastics, fire retardants, lubricants, which is probably an industry that most people are familiar with in terms of vehicles and so forth. So there are a bunch of very diverse applications for micronized graphite. It's not beholden to any one particular market sector.
Yeah, so interesting. And now, Andrew, the company has quite a busy period up ahead. Obviously, you're busy now, and you've got a busy year ahead. What are your goals for the company in sort of the next 12 months and beyond?
So our goal with Springdale is to complete a feasibility study this calendar year, which will essentially articulate an investment decision for us around developing a mine down here in Springdale. The permitting that will associate with that is going to be progressed at the same time. It may be touch and go as to whether we can achieve that by the end of the year. That won't be a function, I don't think, of particular permitting risks. It's a pretty benign project. There's very limited. It's all on cleared farmland, so the vegetation issues you'd have at a virgin site don't exist for us. There's work we need to do in hydrology, but there's we've dust and noise and so forth should all be just pretty straightforward and standard. And this deposit is primarily sitting in oxidized weathered material, so there will be no sulfur or acid drainage issues that you get in other particular mines around waste and tailings that are particularly, that need quite a deal of test work from a permitting perspective. So that's a long-winded way of saying I don't think there'll be any particular great risks on the permitting front for us. It's really a function of the capability of government to turn around documentation in the context of how busy they are on other assets, other projects around the states. So we would certainly think by the end of Q1 next year will be permanent, and by this time next year hopefully we'll be mobilising a construction team at Springdale, based on obviously subject to funding. So that's on Springdale. In terms of the battery anode work up in Collie, we're continuing our feasibility studies around the suitability of the Springdale concentrate. We've got some 115 kilograms of concentrate sitting up at the laboratory in Perth. That's going to be sent to Germany and also used in Collie for test work. That's on the micronizing, spheritizing, and purification processes in particular. So we would again expect to have all that work, significantly advanced by the end of this calendar year, and sort of the overlay to all of that is to us to try and unlock that strategic partner that's going to help us develop the projects over the coming 2 to 3 years. And what we've really got here in front of us is 40 to 50 years of operating life from Springdale and therefore in Collie. And so we've got a really attractive opportunity for a strategic partner to come in that needs this material over a long period of time.
Yeah, very exciting, Andrew. Now, speaking of opportunities, I have one final question for you today, and that is, can you provide our Small Caps audience with just 2 or 3, key takeaways as to why they should have IG6 on their investor stock watch list?
Well, I think the first reason, Jess, is value. From a peer perspective, we are trading below some of our peers, and I think there's an opportunity there for those that want to spend some time looking at our assets to see that there's real quality in the assets, and on a relative basis, we believe firmly that we ought to be trading up higher. And I guess some of that is because we do still have some processes of de-risking to go through, but if you can form a view as to the likelihood of success on those particular risks, then there's a real opportunity here to get ahead of that growth curve on our share price. We've removed that overhang from an investor's perspective with this deal with Comet, so we've kind of cleaned up the capital structure quite considerably over the last few weeks. So that's a real opportunity to drive value for us. We certainly have the right team. We've got graphite experts involved in this company that are equal to any in the industry, and the assets, I think, speak for themselves. But overwhelmingly, the theme of critical minerals, whilst we've seen some flame outs in nickel over the past couple of months and some more interesting times in lithium, the macro theme still holds very strong for graphite and for those raw materials as well. And there certainly is no significant amount of new supply that's sort of going to tsunami the market in graphite. So it's companies such as ourselves that have put in the investment over the last 2 years, and will do again in the next 2, that'll be at the forefront of those new Western suppliers around the world. So I think we're in a great position to capitalise on the market conditions.
Yeah, absolutely, Andrew. Well, Andrew, thank you so much. It's always such a pleasure to chat with you. And it's really wonderful to see, the company's progress of the last couple of months since the last time we've chatted. And really looking forward to having you back on and hearing some more updates with everything that we've chatted about today.
Great, Jess. Yeah, anytime. It's been a pleasure.